Fossil fuel firms sue governments across the world for 13 billion euros as climate policies threaten profits. This is one of these things that I've been talking about for years and years, that the way that these trade deals are configured, so things like NATO, right, a lot of the trade deals that get erected by like the Harper administration, right, they have in them these caveats that say that if a government does something to threaten the profit of a corporation, that the corporation has the right to sue the government. So, and this is the reason why like trade deals like the Trans-Pacific Partnership, like these sorts of things, get kiboshed, because the populace starts to put together that like, wait a minute, corporations can sue us if we do things to help ourselves? Like, it's really fucking stupid when you stop and think about it. Right? Like, it literally says that we as a trade partnership between the two of us agree that corporations should have more power than the states. Right? That is fundamentally what they're saying. And that if you come to your senses as a nation and realize that, hey, climate change is real and is going to cause all kinds of problems, and start to change your policies in order to, you know, avoid oblivion, corporations can sue. Right? And now they are. So the majority of cases are being brought under the Energy Charter Treaty and are being hosted with the International Center for the Settlement of Investment Disputes, a branch of the World Bank. Right? Like, the capitalist system that we live under is rotted to the core. There isn't a single institution in it that has validity. This includes the World Bank. Right? And it's because of this. Fossil fuel companies are suing governments across the world for more than $18 billion after action against climate change has threatened their profits, according to research conducted by campaign group Global Justice Now and provided exclusively to Sky News. 5 energy companies, including British companies Rockhopper and Ascent, are using a legal process that allows commercial entities to sue governments under international laws governing trade agreements and treaties. These corporate arbitration courts operate outside of a country's domestic legal system. According to Global Justice Now, which has collated publicly available information, 5 of the largest lawsuits underway are being brought by TC Energy, RWE, Uniper, Rockhopper, and Ascent Resources. The $18 billion they are collectively suing for is almost a quarter of the entire climate funding provided by developed nations for developing ones, according to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development's most recent assessments. Rockhopper is currently suing the Italian government for $325 million in a dispute related to a ban on offshore oil drilling close to the coastline. Are you guys starting to realize, like, when I say that this is a capitalist death cult, it is a death cult. I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm not trying to connect it to some kind of abstract, like, fantasy thing. I'm not trying to make, like, a Lord of the Rings connection so that the nerds can be like, oh yeah, haha, like a death cult. They are literally, it is a capitalist system that has arranged itself to be a death cult. That societies that are saying, we've got to stop this fossil fuel extraction, it's literally destroying us, will be sued. You understand? Like, it's a death cult. Ascent is asking for $118 million from Slovenia after it passed legislation requiring environmental assessments for fracking. Canada-based TC Energy, the company behind the controversial Keystone XL pipeline, is suing the U.S. government for $15 billion after the Biden administration canceled the project, citing the fight against climate change. Meanwhile, German companies RWE and Uniper are suing the Dutch government for $1.6 billion and $1.06 billion, each following the Dutch government's move to phase out coal and shut down coal-fired plants by 2030. The majority of the cases are being brought under the Energy Charter Treaty and are being hosted with the International Center for the Settlement of Investment Disputes, a branch of the World Bank. The Energy Charter Treaty was created after the end of the Cold War and was designed to provide a stable, transparent legal framework that protected foreign investors as energy markets opened up. So literally at the end of the Cold War, we basically just said, let fascism reign, right? We essentially just said, oh, we should remove as much power as we can from the state. We should remove as much power as we can from individual democracies, right? We can't have people, pesky people, rising up and saying, hey, we'd like breathable air, clean water, we'd like a livable place to be. We would like a system that is stable and it actually encourages us to have a decent life while we're here. Nope, none of that. You can't have any of that. Everything needs to be sacrificed at the altar of the capitalist death cult, which is explicitly stated here. Global Justice Now trade campaigner Jean Baylock told Sky News, fossil fuel companies should be paying to fix the climate crisis they caused, but instead they want a payout. They're suing governments who take climate action through secretive corporate courts, massively increasing the cost of climate action. And also remember, maybe she'll say it, she added, these courts are built into trade deals and operate outside of and supersede domestic courts and legal systems. That means a country that passes meaningful legislation to phase out fossil fuels could face a multi-billion-dollar fine despite acting entirely legally. It's utterly undemocratic. I mean, I would just withdraw from these treaties. Like, if this was happening to me, if I was the Prime Minister of Canada and this shit was going on, I'd be like, I withdraw. Get fucked. Like, I'm not going to pay to these fucking sociopathic death cultists. So how does this work outside government's usual legal system? They've erected their own court system where their own corporate legislatures will go and have their own conversations, right? It's another legal system that operates through the World Bank, that operates at the behest of all of these nations, but all of those nations are subservient to it, right? This has been going on for like 20 years, guys. Like, this is not news, right? Like it's just nobody is standing up and actually ringing the bell about it, right? Nobody's actually standing up and being like, hey, there's an unelected institution that gets to make legal decisions on the behest of all of these nations because we all decided to sign this charter at the end of the Cold War because the United States essentially told us to, right? And that if we didn't go along with it, they'd just stop trading with us. So once again, the capitalist death cult gets its way through bullying, right? These cases are only becoming more common as governments commit to climate action. World leaders may finally be waking up to the threat of the climate and ecological crisis, but fossil fuel companies are holding them to ransom, demanding ever greater payouts through corporate courts. We need to nationalize the entire fossil fuel industry and send these guys to the Hague. Straight up. Just send these guys to the Hague. Like, be done with this. Be done with this nonsense. When world leaders gather in Glasgow, they make lofty promises on climate action, but it will all be for naught if fossil fuel companies can sue governments into a state of climate paralysis. It could make a mockery of pledges at COP26, which is the reason they did it. They knew that all of this was going to happen. Like, these guys are psychopaths, right? Global Justice Now campaigners say that the UK is a hub for the international arbitration system and that all but 2 of the top 30 law firms involved in the lucrative industry have offices in London. Prosecutors are planning to gather outside these law and energy firms. Protesters, rather, are planning to gather outside these law and energy firms on Friday. Good, yeah. We need to be surrounding the halls of power at this point. Like, there is literally nothing left to do. Like, there's literally nothing left to do. You can't negotiate with them. They're psychopaths, right? They won't be negotiated with. And anything they say will just be a pander, right? Maybe they'll throw you a bone, right? We need to, like, literally imagine if instead of confronting Voldemort, like, Harry Potter, like, negotiated with Voldemort. And Voldemort got to take over Hogwarts. But Harry Potter and his like crew were they accepted that, like, oh, we'll take over Hogsmeade, right, or whatever that little town was, and we'll be able to like send our kids in, and we'll have like a protection. Like, that's how this sounds to me. Instead of defeating and destroying the evil demon Voldemort, right, we're gonna negotiate with them. No, Like, no, these guys should go to prison for the rest of their lives, have their assets stripped, and we should use those assets to actually transfer to a clean system. And you know that they're psychopaths, right? Because they're doing this, right? Like, it's becoming obvious. Like, it's becoming obvious.